Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 0.5 of A Cast to the Past, because we are the only crazy folk that we have two podcast episodes, and neither of them are the official first episode of the podcast. But in this edition of the show, we'll be doing something completely different, because the full-length episodes of the Cast to the Past show are going to be about the games, the movies, the TV shows that we grew up, we used to love, and we ask the question, are they still good? We go back down memory lane and we check those out and we talk about those here. But there's other topics that maybe don't warrant an entire hour-long podcast, that maybe they're not tied to one specific video game. At least yet, exactly, because we could be testing the waters, and maybe if we have interest, or if you guys definitely want to check it out, we can do that down the line. So that's where the 0.5 episodes are going to be coming out, and these are going to be happening in the weeks in between. So you can check out the pilot episode. This is going to be coming down the pipeline as you're watching or listening, and then afterwards you can enjoy the Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past episode, which is going to be coming up on October 21st. So get ready for that, folks. And my name is Juan Velez. I'm from San Juan, Puerto Rico. Joining me, we got Ryan McNulty from Boston, Massachusetts. Keith Poushyk from London, Ontario. I got it right.
Hey,
right?
You got it.
You got
it before episode 1.
Whew, yes, this is why we do the 0.5s, man. We gotta iron out the kinks.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about
that
this?
Iron out. Feeling pretty hot and steamy like an iron. Ready to iron out those kinks. You know, talk about some fun topics.
Definitely.
I think I'm ready too. I'm not going to say any more than that.
So let's do it. So what is the topic for this one? We were like, okay, the first
I couldn't remember
episode,
if you said it yet. So I'm like, oh yeah, let's talk about some fun topics.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What are we talking about, guys? And that is talking about Super Nintendo games, because episode 1 is going to be about A Link to the Past, which is for the Super Nintendo. So we were like, okay, we know that game's awesome, and we're going to talk about that, but there's other games that we played growing up that when we think about the Super Nintendo, we think about that game in particular. So the three of us, we had the task of identifying one specific game that we played growing up, that we loved, and we're about to showcase right here, right now. Are you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Good, because Ryan, you're on, man. Go.
All right.
You got a game? What do you got, man? This is show and tell.
What do I get? All right, this is a game, or a series even, that is really near and dear to my heart, but I'm picking one specific entry, and this is going to be Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Kong Quest, which actually for the longest time, I always called it Diddy Kong's Quest, and then it blew my mind that they were like, oh, Conquest. Yeah. Sometimes I just kind of didn't read the full title. You just kind of look at it and you assume you know what it says. But enough about the title. This is just a fantastic platforming game. I think for the Super Nintendo, I don't know if anyone really did just like atmosphere and music better than the Donkey Kong series, in my opinion. They really used a very creative art style too. I forget exactly what it's called, but they're able to do these like 3D looking detailed sprites. And essentially you play as Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong, and you're trying to rescue Donkey Kong, who is captured by King K. Rool. It's a really simple story. It's not about the story at all. It's just about fun platforming. You're traversing through King K. Rool's kind of K. Rool Island, and there's a lot of cool varieties in the platforming. There's a really cool like amusement park based world. There's a volcano world, and it kind of continues on from the first game, because you end on a ship in the first game, so you start on a ship in this game as you're making your way to this island. There's just a lot of cool variety to this game, and it's very special to me. Growing up, like I actually never owned the first Donkey Kong game,
Really?
but I always played it at
Country.
friends'
You're
house.
talking about Country.
Yeah,
right?
Country.
Okay.
Yeah, I always played it at friend's house, and I loved it. And then when I heard the second one is coming out, I like begged my parents to get it for me. I think I got it for Christmas, not 100% sure. So it was the first Donkey Kong game I owned, and I loved it.
Did you know about the original Donkey Kong games, like the arcade games?
I didn't really find out about those until when I got my first Game Boy. I was like, oh, I want Donkey Kong. And I was talking about like Donkey Kong Land, but someone got me like I guess on the Game Boy, just the regular Game Boy, they made like the original Donkey Kong arcade game, but then added a
What
bunch
was
of
that
levels.
like? Just like,
That
this
was
is
very
not what I
disappointing.
expected
Yeah.
at all.
There's that was kind of a theme for me with the Game Boy, because I got this Godzilla game that ended up being like a weird puzzle game, and someday maybe we'll look
Really?
at that. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. I was like, oh, Godzilla, this is gonna be badass, and then you're playing as this little Godzilla guy, and it's got this music that's like doo 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 doo. You're like,
I've never
what
heard of
is
this game
this?
before.
Yeah, no.
But enough about that. Donkey Kong Country 2 is just, it's an amazing platformer. I put it up there with, the best platformers out there. People will talk about Super Mario Brothers 3 and Super Mario World. I love those games too. But it's just something, the atmosphere, the whole tag team ability of, you have two different Kongs. If one of them gets hurt, you play as the other one, and each of them control a little bit differently. Dixie Kong, like, this is kind of the best combination, because Diddy Kong's really like agile, and Dixie Kong has the hair twirl, which really helps you kind of you can slowly kind of descend like helicopter across platforms, so it's super useful. But yeah, that is my favorite Super Nintendo game. It's fantastic. Go play it if you haven't played it already. Pretty much I don't go like 2 years without replaying probably each game in the series. It's been a while. I think I'm overdue, actually.
By that, do you mean just the Super Nintendo ones, or are you including like the N64 Donkey Kong in there as well?
Just the Super Nintendo ones. And I own all three still on my original Super Nintendo.
So I have a question for you then, because I've never actually played Donkey Kong Country 2 or 3. Which is the best of the three? Like, if I were to go back today and play one of the Donkey Kong countries, maybe for a podcast or something like that, which one should I check out?
2 is widely regarded as the best one. They expanded a lot on the original. Because you can jump on the animals and stuff in the original. In this one, they have a couple levels where you actually transform into those animals, and they added some new ones. It's more challenging. They get a little bit more creative with the level designs. The only thing that doesn't really make sense in this game is they added this like kind of currency system, so you get these coins and you can pay for like certain things. Like there's like a game show thing that you can play to like try and get extra lives and stuff, but they also make you pay to save the game. And it's really
I forgot about
it's
that.
really annoying, and it doesn't really add any type of challenge. All it does is make you go back to a level you've already beat, go get some coins, and then you just start select out of the level and then go save. So it really just adds an extra level of monotony that doesn't really need to be there. That's like the one thing that's like the one nitpicky thing. Other than that, it's amazing. And it's definitely the second one. Third one I think is good too, but that's kind of like it's a little bit different and it's kind of underrated, but overall the second one is the best.
Yeah, something I always heard about the third one is that it's arguably or objectively the best game from a platforming standpoint, but it was the third version of that, right? Like they had already done 3 games up to this point, plus the characters were not nearly as memorable. And keep in mind, it came out basically at the tail end of the Super Nintendo.
They actually have like the granny where you save is playing N64, and you can hear the Mario music in the third one.
Yeah, so just think about that, right?
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. So for everybody watching and listening, let us know if you're interested of us doing a lengthier version of a Donkey Kong Country episode, whether it be for any DKC game in particular. At the same time, if you have any random questions, these 0.5 episodes can also be a space for a Q&A, question and answer, just, sort of laid back thing. We talked about snacks on the pilot episode. So if you have any questions or comments and stuff like that, if you're watching and listening on YouTube, just drop a comment. If you're listening to us on iTunes, look up A Cast to the Past with the familiar sword and shield logo. You can send us an email, acasttothepast@gmail.com, my friends. With that being said, Keith.
Yes.
What's your game, man? What you got?
Well, today I bring to the table my personal favorite Super Nintendo game, and that is Kirby's Superstar. It's it's the 8th Kirby game. Growing up, I used to Kirby was probably my Nintendo favorite, where like some people love Mario, some people love Zelda. I was a Kirby guy. I was a fat kid. I probably related to Kirby in some way.
You identified.
I did. Me and that little pink blob. But Kirby was a game for me where, and I feel like everybody has one of these, where I rented it so much from Blockbuster that they just gave it to me. Like, just buy the damn thing. You've already spent more than it's worth renting it, so just take it. So, like, I would just rent it over and over and over and play through it. I loved the fact that it's not one game. Like, it's not just, oh, here's level 1, here's level 2, here's level 3. It's broken out into different, like, stories where there's 5 or 6 different types. Like, one, you're going after this Dynabird, that's a giant bird. It has its own set of levels. Then you're going after King Dedede in the other one. And then you're going after Meta Knight, all of these famous Kirby characters. And everything just feels so different. Then there's this one that you unlock later after beating a couple that's like Venture Through the Galaxy. And it's this very in-depth, cool, like longer story inside of it that you have to unlock and earn. And it just kept me hooked for so long. And God, I love that game. All the powers were cool. My favorite one was like a mirror thing that you would shoot mirrors at everyone. They had this buddy system where you could play 2 players, or you could have like an AI controlled thing. You kind of have all of your typical Kirby powers leading up to that point: your fire, your ice, your sword, your ninja. And they had like the special powers. Like, I think that was the first time where Kirby could just straight up cook dudes. Like, he'd put on a chef hat, throw them in a pot, and boil them alive and turn them into health. And one of my favorite SNES games. It's one of those things, you know how when we talked about nostalgia on episode 0, where it might not be one of the best games ever, but to me, it just had such an impact on what I played growing up that it just holds a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, I remember when they announced it for the Super Nintendo Classic, a lot of people were sort of going back and forth over which is the best Kirby game and which one they should have added, because I know there's like a golf type mini game or like a Kirby game for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, there was a Kirby golf game, which
really?
is really, really good.
Course, or
yeah,
I think so.
Yes.
Pretty
That's
sure it's
either
called
that
Dream
or
Course.
a DS game. Yeah, but there is a Kirby Dream Course game.
Yeah, but good pick. For me, I wanted to go a little different because your Donkey Kongs, your Kirbys, those are I'm not calling your games as out because those are arguably awesome games. But I'm Juan. I want to bring something different to the table. And we always talk about your Golden Eyes and other licensed games on the N64 and other consoles, but the Super Nintendo, I think, had a lot of awesome games that were licensed based on movies and stuff like that. So my pick is actually going to be Batman Returns. Now, this actually came out about a year after the movie, like 6 to 8 months afterwards, because the original Tim Burton movie came out on June 16th, 1992. Now, the game came out January 15th, 1993, and I don't know how I got it, but I owned this game, and I never beat it. Because this game, for those who don't know...
It's hard, right?
Yeah, it's really, really hard. Like, I could always get up to the second stage, and I could sometimes get by it, but it would always be, like, by a miracle. And by the time I got to the third stage, I would be destroyed because it's an arcade beat-em-up type game. So think of your Final Fights, your Knights of the Round, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I feel like the Super Nintendo and arcade machines at that time, they were chock full of them, right? Like, almost every single IP had some kind of beat-em-up game. But what really stood out to me with this one is like a lot of these games that came out based on movies would often not be a lot like, they would be your Godzillas. Ryan mentioned the Godzilla game, right? You don't think Godzilla? Obviously, it's going to be a puzzle game, guys. Come on now. With this, it felt like they actually had like a really crappy Michael Keaton pop up at the beginning, just like a sprite animation going up with the Batman logo in the background. You see the Batmobile go in. The music is exactly how it was like in the movies. Plus, they actually have a couple of modified renditions of the music from the movies in the game. And then when you play as the character, you know, it feels like Batman. Arguably, it's a pretty unoriginal game because it is the definition of a generic beat-em-up game. And it's actually a single-player game, if I believe, because It's surprising, right? Because almost every beat 'em up game around that time was like 2 to 4 players, but this one you were playing Batman, and some of the levels, like the first one, you can move around the stage and you can beat the characters up, but the second one, for whatever reason, I thought that this was odd. You could only use the Batarang. There was no melee attack, and it was only side-scrolling. You couldn't actually move up or down on the stage. So I always thought that was a little different, but I loved it because when you look at the atmosphere, it felt like a Tim Burton game. It felt like a Tim Burton movie. And I actually played it recently, which is one of the final questions I want to ask both of you guys. And it still holds up. I still watch it, and my initial reaction after having played it this week was, I got to go back and watch the movie, which ultimately I'm assuming that's what they wanted to do, because even though the movie came out in 1992, this came out in 1993 in January, I assumed this was somehow tied to a VHS release or something, because it's just weird, right? Like it comes out July, August, September, October, November, December. Yeah, it comes out 7 months after the movie. That's a bit of a weird release date, right?
So wait, the second Batman movie came out in 92?
It says here the release date for Batman Returns for the Tim Burton ones. We got to point out June 16th, 1992. The game came out in 1993, and I love these movies. The first one, the second one. When we talk about your forevers and stuff like that, let's maybe not really have that conversation.
There's nothing you can't put on a Bat MasterCard. That's what that movie taught me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Just George Clooney with the other ones and bat nipples, and this was a good game though. Did you guys play any either this one or other decent licensed games on Super Nintendo? Just like a quick reaction.
I think I remember playing. I've actually played both the games that have been mentioned. Yeah, but I do remember playing Batman Returns. I believe. I don't think there a beat 'em up game for the first movie. I think this is the one that I played. Does his like special move like hurt himself?
Yeah, I think he does like a cape
that's
attack.
Like the one thing I remember, and that annoyed me. I was like,
"Welcome to beat 'em up from the early '90s."
Yep.
Beat 'em up games, like you know what the good thing about this being single player? It really annoys me when beat 'em up games let you hurt your like fellow player.
Yeah,
because it's just like, oh, all you're doing is just trying to make me put more money into this because you're just being cheap. And then they just did it in the console versions too, because why not?
See this right here? Got to get them quarters, baby.
People talk about your DLCs, man. I've always said it. I went to the Galloping Ghost Arcade in Illinois, which if anybody hasn't gone to, I have a video on my YouTube channel, cheap plug, about that. And the first, you pay a fixed fee, right, to go into that arcade. And the first thought, it was like, okay, I'm having an awesome time, but hypothetically, if it wasn't the fixed fee and I were to play these arcade games, how much money would I have played? We actually did the math. I would have spent over $20 already. I'm like, people, they've always been nickel and diming us for video games. So this right here, the season passes, the deluxe editions, this is nothing new, my friends.
Yeah, it's a controversial statement, but it's actually gotten better, because at least you get, like, if you could put in a quarter into a pinball machine and only get 15 seconds of playtime out of it, then you put in another quarter. At least
and then here's the question.
You might get a couple hours.
Yeah. And then here's the question. How much did these games that we're talking about used to cost back in the day? Almost the exact same price of games now, yet we're not accounting inflation. We're not putting that into the mix. Because Super Nintendo games in Puerto Rico were easily between $50 to $80, give or take. So I don't know how that was for you guys, but yeah.
I don't remember how much Super Nintendo games costed. The first games I remember their cost. What?
I'm looking up Super Nintendo game.
I was gonna say the first games I remember, like the price of, was PlayStation games were $40 in the US.
That sounds nice. I remember saving up money and buying WWF No Mercy for $100 in Canada.
I do remember Donkey Kong 64 though, because it had the expansion pack, was like $80 or so. It was like $70 or $80.
Damn,
video games are expensive.
We're going to close this off with a little information from IGN. The article is The Real Cost of Gaming, Inflation, Time, and Purchasing Power. And they state, an NES game in 1990, the original Nintendo, on average was about $50. That's $89 in 2013 money, so that would be more now. Your $70 N64 cartridges in 1998 would require the equivalent of $100 today. Hell, the $50 PS2 games you bought in 2005 would be worth $60 which is the exact retail price of a game in 2013. So this is an article from 2013. So if an NES game was about $50, yeah, we're talking about a couple of dollars. I mean, think about Street Fighter on the Super Nintendo. I know that that's not a topic, but people bought that game like 20 times in that same console with every edition that came out with that game. So just think about that. And ladies and gentlemen, that has been Volume 1 of our favorite games for the Super Nintendo. We're calling it Volume 1 because we're probably going to be doing this every now and then. And what you think of this, Keith?
You know, it felt pretty good. Almost as good as the things that we'll be talking about in the coming weeks. Like on October 21st, when we finally get to episode 1.
Yes.
And do The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. It might be the third thing showing up on this feed, but I swear it is episode 1, A Link to the Past. Look for it October 21st. Then coming up after that, on November 4th, we're going to take a deep dive into The Matrix. Look at some of that great 2001 hacking. All those, remember that green text going down? Yeah, we're going to be seeing a lot of that come November 4th. And then to wrap it up, on November 18th, we're looking at the beginning of the Attitude Era, going back to our wrestling roots and covering WrestleMania 14. That's when Steve Austin became the man. Stone Cold.
Spoilers.
And stay tuned for episode 0.7. We're never going to get to episode 1, people. No, but don't forget, you can also join our Discord channel at castedpast.com/Discord. We're going to be having separate categories. So this is like a chat app, separate categories for each respective episode. So right now, we have one going up with A Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, which Ryan already finished, but we'll be talking about that in that very episode. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, don't forget that these 0.5 episodes are not just going to be us presenting something, depending on your feedback, your comments, and stuff like that, which thank you for the love. Over 100 views on the pilot episode, not even on the official episode. So you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Any questions for a Q&A video, drop them right here. And who knows, maybe in the next one, we'll be talking about those questions. And we, ladies and gentlemen, will be providing the answers. So until next time, subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe on iTunes, drop reviews on iTunes, and follow us on social media, A Cast of the Past, on all of the above. Take care. See you. Finally, episode 1. It is actually going to happen. We are actually going to get there. Are we not there? Are we not there almost, Ryan? Are we not
We're
almost there?
We're almost
so
there.
close. Yet so far.
We're halfway there. Oh.
All right, we're done.
We're done.
Goodbye. See
Goodbye,
everybody
everybody.
next time.